Welcome back, everybody. I know it's been a while since I made a video, and truth be told, I wanted to finish my sweet studio before I did so. But the state of DC film has kind of compelled me to make a video. I'm hoping sometime before 2023 is out, it'll be done, or at least started. As we all know, there have been a lot of changes to Warner Brothers, Discovery, and DC Films since David Zaslav took control of the super company. Today, in fact, the movie Black Adam just dropped on digital, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. When it opened in theaters, it pulled in around $67 million its opening weekend. Pretty good numbers. And domestically, it did about $151 million, and roughly about $350 million worldwide. Of course, how good or bad the movie is at this point is really immaterial. I just watched it today. I thought it was pretty entertaining. What people are talking about is a certain cameo at the end of the movie. And at this point, I will say spoilers if you haven't seen it. But it's digital now, so everybody should go see it. At the end of the movie, a post-credits scene, there's a certain cameo by a certain actor known to play Superman. Yeah, that's right. We finally have confirmation that Henry Cavill's Superman is still in DC film. After 5 long years of waiting after the horrible experience that is the Justice League, we now know that Henry Cavill's Superman is still the Man of Steel for DC film. And furthermore, there's been confirmation that Ben Affleck's Batman is still kicking around DC film as well. We knew he was in the Flash movie, but we recently heard that he is in the Aquaman sequel as well. So we got to ask the question, what does this all mean? Quite honestly, I don't know. But we can look at everything and speculate. In May of 2021, David Zaslav was announced as the new CEO of the newly announced merger between Warner Brothers and Discovery. One of his first decisions was to focus the efforts of this new super company on theatrical releases. Now, this is different from the previous management who wanted to focus on producing content for the streaming platform HBO Max. They were essentially wanting to compete against the big boys like Netflix, Disney Plus, and Quibi. Just kidding on the last one. Does anybody remember Quibi? Yeah, I sure don't. Zaslav made the very unusual and somewhat controversial decision to shelve a Batgirl movie and classify it as a loss for tax purposes. This effectively means that the Batgirl movie will never see the light of day. It won't be on HBO Max or anything else. Legally, it can't be released, at least for the foreseeable future. And who knows after that. Now, this is kind of a bummer because I did want to see Leslie Grace as Barbara Gordon, aka Batgirl, and I wanted to see Brendan Fraser in a DC role. Beyond Doom Patrol, he's great in that. J.K. Simmons, I liked him in the Justice League. I wanted to see more of his Commissioner Gordon. And of course, the biggest loss is Michael Keaton reprising his role as Bruce Wayne from the '89 version of Batman. Now, this move to shelve Batgirl wasn't without its critics. People like Kevin Smith on one of his podcasts described it as not being a good look, referring to the fact that Leslie Grace is a person of color. Ultimately, I didn't think it came down to that, but I can see his point of view on this. When it's all said and done, though, it was a business decision. It's based on Zaslav's vision of DC projects being theatrical in nature. Also, it was greenlit under the previous management. Again, it could have been kind of cool because Keaton's Batman was going to be a mentor to Batgirl, kind of like Batman Beyond, with Batgirl substituting for Terry McGinnis's version of Batman. This had been the plan because the studio wanted to distance themselves from the DCEU, Zack Snyder specifically. Now, again, this was under the previous management. They also had a Flash movie that was designed to reset the DC film timeline, kind of like Flashpoint Paradox, and erase all the parts of the DCEU that they felt were not working and keep the ones that were, at least in their opinion. This meant that Henry Cavill's Superman was going to die off-screen, and Batfleck would basically have a little cameo and step down as the Dark Knight. But now things are different. How different, you may ask? Well, pretty much as different as it can be from the previous administration. Quite recently, it was announced as part of Zaslav's 10-year plan that there would be co-CEOs and chairpersons for DC Studios. First being the longtime film producer and businessman Peter Safran to head up the financial side of the studio, and the second being the creative powerhouse director and producer James Gunn. By the way, I actually called this in a previous video. But first, let us take a look at who exactly is Peter Safran. Well, according to Wikipedia, Safran started as a corporate attorney in New York City before becoming an assistant at United Talent Agency. He made his rounds with other talent agencies, gaining a client list with people like Brad Pitt, Jennifer Aniston, Adam Sandler, and Nicolas Cage, among others. All in all, not a bad list. In 2006, Safran founded his own talent agency named The Safran Company. He also took his entire client list with him. During this period of time, Safran started dipping his feet into film producing. He was EP, executive producer, on such films like Scary Movie, My Baby's Daddy, Jiminy Glick in La La Wood, and of course, the criminally underrated Meet the Spartans. Safran also produced a number of short films. This is where he met and started working with two notable directors that would change the course of his career, first being James Wan, and the next, you guessed it, James Gunn. The Jameses. Around 2013, the trajectory of Safran's producing changed with the release of the James Wan directed The Conjuring. The next year, he was a producer on the film Annabelle. From that point on, Safran totally found his niche and focused on producing comparatively lower budget horror or thriller movies that did really great at the box office. In 2018, Safran's relationship with James Wan paid big dividends, as he was a producer on the first Aquaman, along with many other DC properties, including the James Gunn-directed Suicide Squad and HBO Max spin-off series Peacemaker. When it comes down to numbers, Peter Safran-produced movies have grossed over $4 billion worldwide. Now, let's talk about James Gunn, the creative director of sorts. I've done videos that praise the talent of James Gunn. This recent promotion to co-CEO of DC Film puts him on a similar level of a Kevin Feige. I'm sure that Zaslav is hoping that Gunn has learned the secrets of creating a shared film universe from Feige. Either way, it's gonna be an interesting dynamic having this split between essentially a director with James Gunn and a producer with Peter Safran. Now, historically, shared power tends not to work out too well, but let's see how this plays out. One thing to keep in mind, as it stands, there is no Snyderverse anymore. Safran and Gunn are the co-CEOs of DC Studio, not the DCEU. Previous Warner Brothers studio heads like Walter Hamada had shown interest in a reset of DC film. Pretty much eliminate all the elements of the Snyderverse they didn't care for. This was the intent of the Flash movie. But now everything is up in the air. Is the DCEU or Snyderverse really dead? Up until the Black Adam movie, I would have said yes. But then, like I had said in the beginning of the video, the post-credit scene of Black Adam contains a cameo from none other than Henry Cavill reprising the role of Superman. Warner Brothers and Cavill had been on a very adversarial relationship since the release of the Justice League in 2017. This culminated in Cavill refusing to cameo in the end of the Shazam movie. If you remember, it was the Superman suit, but it had a body double, and the suit was shot from the neck down, so it wouldn't reveal that it wasn't Cavill. Now, Henry's unwillingness to play this brief role in Shazam had pretty much left him out in the cold for any Superman appearances. Of course, a follow-up film to the 2013 Man of Steel. That was until recently, and had a lot to do with the influence of a former professional wrestler turned Hollywood megastar, Hulk Hogan. I'm kidding, I'm totally talking about The Rock. How is it possible that The Rock can overturn the will of Warner Brothers? Simply put, they were playing the long game. Dwayne Johnson himself had mentioned in a Variety article that he had fought for years to bring Cavill back. The studio said no, but for the producers of the film, Hiram Garcia, Danny Garcia, and Dwayne Johnson himself, taking no was never an option. Of course, I'm paraphrasing the great one. It's also worth mentioning that Danny Garcia is the manager of both Dwayne Johnson and Henry Cavill. So having Cavill's Superman appear in the movie really helps boost the stature of Black Adam. As you can see, Dwayne Johnson definitely has some pull with Warner Brothers. It's possible that in the future, he might be a big creative force for the studio. Almost immediately after the release of Black Adam and word got out that Henry Cavill is in the movie, it was announced that Cavill would finally get his follow-up to Man of Steel. It's worth noting that in a few short months, it's going to be 2023. Man of Steel opened in 2013. According to the very reliable Grace Randolph, the Man of Steel 2 has no script or director attached. Also, Cavill does not have a long-term contract at this point. This move has also sent ripples through other companies that work with Cavill, specifically Netflix, who Cavill has played Geralt of Rivia in the smash Netflix original series, The Witcher. Cavill revealed on Instagram that he would not be returning to the titular character for a fourth season, and the Australian actor and brother to Thor, Liam Hemsworth, would be taking over the role. Fans of the series were less than happy and believed that Henry's new commitment to the future Superman projects were to blame for his departure. In reality, and I'm sure Superman might have something to do with it, it wasn't the sole reason. Apparently, when it comes down to it, it all boiled down to creative differences. According to the former Witcher producer Bo DeMaio, some of the writers of the show were not the biggest fans of the source material, which of course raises the question, why the hell are you writing on The Witcher if you don't like The Witcher? Henry Cavill, on the other hand, is a huge fan of the novels and the games, and this didn't sit well with the nerdy actor. Cavill also appears in the Enola Holmes series as Enola's uncle, some guy named Sherlock. I would imagine he would probably stay on with this series, especially since he's not the main character. It's worth noting that this is pure speculation on my part, but Cavill might have maybe an even bigger franchise on the horizon, and that's the role of Bond, James Bond. James Bond. Sorry. Currently, another James Bond movie isn't on the schedule yet. But when they do get the ball rolling, many people think that it's Henry Cavill's role to lose. By the way, a little bit of useless trivia. Apparently, Cavill was the second choice for Bond back in 2006 for Casino Royale. Daniel Craig ultimately got the part, and one of the reasonings behind it was the producers felt that Cavill was too skinny for the role and wouldn't be able to bulk up appropriately. I think this is kind of funny, actually. I mean, Cavill's pretty swole now. This all leads up to the age-old question of what does it all mean? At this point, it could be a whole number of things, and it may be best to keep plans malleable until a final direction is decided. It doesn't appear the plans from the previous regime will still come into play, though. In fact, truth be told, I'm not entirely convinced that the Flash movie will be released, given all the troubles of the lead actor, Ezra Miller, and that the studio doesn't plan on the Great Reset. It would be kind of a bummer, because I've heard the movie is actually pretty good, and that Ezra is good. I really want to see Michael Keaton as Batman at least one more time. But at least whatever plans DC has for the future involves Henry Cavill, and maybe even Batfleck, and I can definitely get behind that. As always, fare thee well, my friends, and take care. Cue the music.